This lesson is predominantly coming from this section of the Bible shown in the highlighted section of this chart. Lesson 29. Geopolitical scene during the monarchal period. To help orient ourselves, I am showing a map of the entire Eastern Hemisphere. To focus on the area of the Bible that we will be dealing with, I will zoom in on the Middle East, which is the area outlined in the red box. Israel was in a precarious position, occupying that strip of land in the purple rectangle on this map, which served as a land bridge between three great continents. Africa was to the southwest, and it contained the mighty nation of Egypt, depicted in the brown oval on this map, which had its time of dominance and expansion. Asia was to the north and east, which contained the nations of Syria, called Aram in some versions of the Bible, depicted here within the green oval. Asia also contained the nation of Assyria, depicted in the red oval, Babylon, depicted within the blue oval, and Medo-Persia, depicted in the yellow oval. These nations would have their day of expansion, dominance, and then fall. The continent of Europe, to the northwest, contained Greece and Rome, who would come into play later in Israel's history and would have a great effect on the people living during the time of the New Testament. Without God's divine help, this relatively little nation, Israel, was a sitting duck. During the monarchal period of Israel's history from about 1000 BC to about 586 BC, the other nations each had their day of expansion, dominance, and then fell, conquered by another. As the Assyrians expanded their domination of the Middle East during their height of their power, shown in the shaded area on this map, the kings of Israel and Judah sometimes would hire other nations like Egypt or Syria to help fight the Assyrians. The Book of Kings and Chronicles detail the interaction the Jews had with Assyria as well as other nations. The Assyrians were ruthless and cruel people who were noted for their barbaric torture of skinning people alive and many other atrocities. The prophet Jonah was sent to Nineveh, which was the capital of Assyria, to warn them that if they did not repent of their evil, they would be destroyed. Knowing how mean these people were, we can understand why Jonah did not want them to be spared God's judgment. God had to work on Jonah. Even though the people of Nineveh repented of their evil after the preaching of Jonah, they reverted to their evil ways about 100 years later. After Assyria was used by God to judge the northern kingdom of Israel, the Assyrians were eventually judged by God using another conquering empire. The next major nation to become a dominant empire was Babylon. Although it started out as a somewhat small nation located within the blue oval on this map, Babylon conquered and became a great empire shown in the shaded area on this map, whose territory would encompass all the nations previously mentioned, including parts of Egypt. Yes, Babylon would conquer Jerusalem and was the nation God used to bring judgment on the kingdom of Judah for their sins. Because the kingdom of Judah had committed such atrocities, God used the Babylonians to punish them. The Babylonians attacked Jerusalem, killed many Jews, burned the city, destroyed Solomon's beautiful temple, and deported most of the remaining Jews and the temple artifacts to Babylon. As prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah, the Jews would remain in Babylon as captives for 70 years. The yellow shaded area on this map shows the extent of the Babylonian Empire at its height. During those 70 years in Babylon, God did not leave the Jews all by themselves. He raised up prophets among them and spoke his word to them and encouraged them. The prophets that ministered during this time are called exilic prophets because they ministered during the exile. Among these prophets were Daniel, who ministered from about 604 to 535 BC. His writings include the more well-known stories of the 3 Hebrew boys in the fiery furnace, Nebuchadnezzar's dream and his fall, the episode of the writing on the wall, the fall of Babylon, the conquest of the Medo-Persian Empire, and Daniel and the lion's den. The book of Daniel has often been called the framework of prophecy because Daniel's prophecies also contain much of world history and help establish principles to interpret the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible. Another major prophet who ministered during the exile was the prophet Ezekiel, who ministered from about 593 to 570 BC. During these 70 years of exile, the Persians conquered the Babylonians, and it was during the Persian rule that the story of Esther took place, which highlights God's providential care of the Jews still in exile during Persian rule, when it seemed like the Jews were going to be annihilated. Under the reign of the Persian king Cyrus, the Jews were allowed to return to their homeland. They returned to Israel in 3 separate waves over an approximate 100-year period. The temple was rebuilt, which is recorded in the book of Ezra, but of course it was nothing like Solomon's original temple. The walls are rebuilt, which is recorded in the book of Nehemiah. The prophets that ministered during this time period are called post-exilic prophets because they ministered after the exile and are listed in the following chart. The Jews were cured of idolatry. Never again did they worship idol gods. However, they were not cured of other sins. As we shall see, the religious leaders became corrupt and began to gradually form their own set of laws that they made equal with God's laws. In our next lesson, we will take a look at the period of time between the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible. This sets the stage for the New Testament. Don't miss our next lesson. Talk to you next time. Goodbye for now.